The world of RPG Maker games is really unique and fascinating. You can find games made by a single person, following their vision that have more passion and soul put into them than bigger budget games. Before, I've talked about Black Souls, now I'm here to talk about another hidden RPG Maker gem, Demon's Roots. I played through it fully and was thoroughly impressed. I'm here to tell you what's so good about it and why you should play it. Demon's Roots was created by the Dojin Circle Quick Now Aristocrat, which seems to be made up of one person known as Akai Mato. They are notable for releasing some erotic doujinshi work featuring femdom, but they've also released another RPG Maker game called King Exit before this. Demon's Roots is actually a prequel to King Exit, but you don't need to play it to understand Demon's Roots. It works well as a standalone game, but rewards people who are familiar with King Exit, much in the same way something like Yakuza 0 does. King Exit used to be on Steam but got taken down because the English publisher lost the rights to it. A good thing, because the English translation for it was terrible, essentially a machine translation. Fortunately, Akai Mato got Kagura Games to localize Demon's Roots, and gave it the decent translation it deserves. King Exit took Akai Mato 3 years to make, while Demon's Roots took another 4 years. What is Demon's Roots about anyway? In the world of Demon's Roots, humanity waged a brutal war against the demons that ruled them. Eventually, a noble hero killed the Demon Lord, driving the remaining demons into the Dark Realm. Of course, the Dark Realm is a cruel place of only darkness, where nothing can grow. Living conditions there are harsh, even for demons. Hundreds of years later, the Dark Realm becomes unstable and threatens to collapse entirely. In a last-ditch effort, the demons wage war against humanity once again, aiming to conquer the continent, and make it a place where demons can live peacefully. At the center of this conflict is Death Polka, our protagonist, a demon that appears very human and knows much about the human nations that have been founded since the demons were defeated. Because of her knowledge, she is given a kind of leadership position, and comes up with invasion strategies. So what I think is really fascinating about the setup is how it's a role reversal of traditional JRPGs established in Dragon Quest, where you take control of an invading demon army instead of being the hero that has to fight off the demons. It also plays with those conventions by asking the natural question of what happens after the great evil has been defeated by the hero. It analyzes the effects the loss of the Demon King has had on the demons, also showing how humanity hasn't become peaceful just because they overcame the demons. Without that greater enemy bringing them together, humans have splintered off into different countries and squabbled among each other. This is what allows the demons to invade at all. If they had that unity they had before, the demons wouldn't stand a chance in their weakened state. The conflict is framed in a morally grey way at first. The demons are the aggressors, and Death Polka says she walks the path of evil, but they're just fighting for their own survival. They've tried negotiating peace, but their emissaries are always cut down. So this is the only option they have left. Their methods can be underhanded, using brainwashing to ensure captured soldiers don't turn against them, and they do cause a fair amount of destruction. The beginning really reinforces this idea, as the demons begin their invasion of Bathos, a peaceful country made up of seemingly good people. The game shows the after effects of the conquest of this country on the civilians. However, as the game goes on, it becomes clear this country is an exception, and the rest are ruled by complete bastards. Slavery is common and has become the main source of labor on the continent. Slaves are treated cruelly, and any slave that disobeys is sent to the slave internment camp. At the center of this is the Empire, the main antagonistic force and largest country on the continent that controls most of the other countries from the shadows. They are responsible for the system of slavery and oppression. Death Polka's battle becomes something not simply about the survival of the demons, but of freeing the slaves and ending the cycle of oppression. You may have heard how Akai Mato is a big fan of Alisoft games like Rance, and that influence shows itself here. I think the strongest thing Demon Roots has in common with Rance is how they're both able to seamlessly intertwine serious drama and wacky eroge antics. The story can get very dark, but knows when to lighten up and be a bit whimsical without undermining the storytelling. For example, there's a country called Doremi Fuck Kingdom. Yes, that is really what it's called. It's where a majority of the Ero scenes are, and is a largely optional area, it becomes an important location in the story. The story doesn't simply take inspiration from Alisoft, it feels like it has a lot of love for JRPGs as a whole. The very beginning of the game feels like a homage to Chrono Trigger, with both of them starting with a festival celebrating the anniversary of the country's founding. There are parts that feel Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy inspired, so interesting stuff for every JRPG fan. I think the pacing of the stories is excellent. It's always fast-paced, and there's a roller coaster of twists and turns. There are times when you have some free time to explore and do side stuff, but when you do the story, things happen constantly. I've been talking all this time about the story, but let's shift focus to the characters. This is a lovable and well-developed main party. Death Polka is a protagonist. He's so devilishly cute and frighteningly strong. She's fully devoted to saving her people, even if she has to walk the path of evil to do so. It becomes evident that she's more compassionate towards humans than she lets on. She simply can't turn a blind eye to people suffering, even if it could be advantageous for her. What she really wants is peaceful coexistence between humans and demons, yet knows that it can't be a reality while the Empire exists. She's also a character with vague memories of her past, though the mystery of her past is one of the narrative threads throughout the game. The way it's explored and the ultimate payoff for it is fantastic. She's the perfect protagonist for this kind of game, equal parts fun and fascinating. She's probably my favorite female protagonist I've seen in an RPG. Next we have Lily Killer, the enigmatic serial killer that ends up helping Death Polka on occasions. She's a character that's absolutely bonkers. She's more than a surface-level crazy woman. Her past is mysterious as well. When all is revealed about her, it makes sense why she's like this, and it totally recontextualizes early scenes with her. Aside from that, I love the way she plays off for other characters. She has this obsessive infatuation with Death Polka, while Death Polka is the only one that can handle her. The other party members are kinda scared of her, which makes for some amusing banter. And she's the first real party member you get. She's a slave, but was formerly a Knight of Lace, a peaceful country that fell to a neighboring country. She's very unfortunate and pitiful. Death Polka gives her courage and determination to save her fellow Knights of Lace that were enslaved. She's compassionate, which is reflected in gameplay where she's a tank that can take damage for other party members. Kalinka is a gladiator and is an entertaining character. Her circumstances are sad. She was born into slavery and forced to fight for her life since she was young, but tries to see the bright side of things and smile in the face of hardship. She's the oblivious sort, which can lead to amusing banter. Sarasa is the magic user of the group. She's level-headed and smart. I really enjoyed her arc in development. First, she's cold and unwilling to help Death Polka. She wants to help and free her classmates, but knows that attempting to do so could end up only harming her peers, because the situation there is more complicated than the places Death Polka has been previously. Of course, eventually Death Polka gives her the willpower to resist and break the system. Aside from her arc, she's a very fun character in general. In particular, I like the friendship she develops with Kalinka. At first, she makes fun of Kalinka for being dumb, but grows closer to her after learning more about her circumstances. Diana is next. She's an FBI agent that was isekai'd into the continent by a time and dimension-traveling robot that does human trafficking. She's able to adjust to this new world fairly quickly. Her character arc is pretty unique because most of it happens independent of Death Polka. She gives the spotlight to herself at certain points. Her arc is all about her settling unfinished business from her world. Her adoptive, drug-dealing father, Diablos, also got isekai'd, and she needs to put an end to his ambitions once again. The story of Diana and Diablos that plays throughout the game is one of the biggest surprises for me. I didn't expect it to be one of the most emotional and compelling storylines in the game. Machista is the lovable little femboy prince. He was one of the princes of the Empire, but because of political sabotage, he was sent to the slave internment camp. He was able to break out and join the party. He wants to become the next emperor, so he can abolish slavery and change the empire for the better. He's a fun character to have around because of the contrast of his very proud and bold personality to his cute appearance. He ends up developing a rather intimate relationship with Diana, which I didn't expect but was very well handled and sweet. Lastly, we have Remnant Mabius, said to be the strongest swordsman among demons. He's a loyal soldier who is just as dedicated as Death Polka to saving demons. His arc is extremely cool, but impossible to talk about without spoiling anything. But trust me on this one. All in all, a fantastic group of characters. A rare case where I can't say I dislike any of them. The game does a good job of giving each of them enough spotlight so it doesn't feel like any character is forgotten, like what happens in some other JRPGs. What brings all these characters together is that they're all victims of the world, which is why they're able to empathize with each other's circumstances and help each other grow. Also, this cast is extremely gay. There's a lot of obvious Yuri undertones in the relationship Death Polka has with her female companions, aside from Diana. There are some fun characters outside the main cast too. For example, the NPC Hannah. He's a slave that Death Polka rescues early on that becomes infatuated with Death Polka. He becomes her maid and a merchant so she can be useful for her. You can find her in nearly every dungeon so she can sell items to you. With some amusing banter about how she got there or how much she loves Death Polka. There are some other notable NPCs like this, such as the Remnants, the former direct subordinates of the Demon Lord that are now leading the demons. I always like to check on Todiera after conquering a territory to see what he was up to. If I had one complaint, it's that the antagonists are kind of one note, with a few exceptions. The Emperor is the big bad of the game. He's the one ruling the Empire and is directly responsible for slavery and all the bad things that happen. He doesn't have as much style as the Emperor from Final Fantasy II, but he has a bit of depth to him. Although, that depth isn't shown until near the end of the game. He's an okay villain overall, but I do wish he was better. The world building for the continent is very well executed. It feels like an absurd and fantastical yet believable world. I think this is due to all the different NPCs you can talk to that have unique dialogue. I couldn't help but go around and talk to random people at every location I was at to see what they would say. They could give some interesting insight into how the people in the area feel and their general living conditions. In addition, some of the dialogue can change as the story progresses. The story takes place over the span of a few years, so naturally some dialogue will change to reflect that. Not everything changes, it's not quite on the level of a Kiseki game. It was neat seeing some people start to warm up to demons. There's a library in Bethos where you can read up on bits of additional lore. Another thing they do extremely well is make the Empire feel like an imposing, unstoppable threat. Even when you don't see them in a lot of the game, their presence is felt. There are these orbs everywhere that are like TVs and transmit what's happening in the slave internment camp. This serves as a reminder to people what happens to people who defy the Empire. This goes to show how the Empire rules the continent with fear. The shackles almost every party member wear is another grim reminder of their power. The Empire is the only country that has the means of removing the shackles. They're always shown through the characters that while you have liberated a country, the system of slavery itself is very much still present, and in order to truly take it down, you need to deal with the Empire. It goes to great lengths to show how corrupt and evil countries on the continent are. Rukluk is a great example. It's where Sarasa is from, a school-like place on the surface. However, the school teaches magic while forcing strict obedience through fear and propaganda. They teach of how the students should be proud to die for the Empire and instill absolute obedience by harshly punishing even minor mistakes. The students are dehumanized by being forced into teleportation devices that separate a person from their lower body, essentially holding half of their body hostage, making it impossible to resist anything that happens to them. They are used as tools and human shields. They exist to power the magical barrier on Rukluk until they are exhausted or die. The worst part is that because they were raised in this environment, they think it's normal and don't even think to question it. Sarasa is in a unique position, as she wasn't born there. She was abducted when she was very young. Before she was taken in, her mother gave her a spirit, which went unnoticed by the teachers. Using it, she could observe the outside world. With this, she was able to learn how warped Rukluk truly is. She lacks any power to do anything about it. It felt like a somewhat grounded take on a fascist system in a fantasy world like this. The gameplay is like that of a normal turn-based JRPG. The turn order is decided by who has the most agility. This does have one interesting twist, and that's the TP meter. A meter that goes up whenever a character lands an attack or gets hit. The points you get for it can be used to use a character's special abilities, each character having unique ones and one super attack that gets unlocked as their story progresses. It reminded me a lot of the craft points gauge in crafts in the Kiseki games. It's a cool system that gives each character a unique playstyle and reason why you might want to use them. I thought what they did with Diana was creative in particular. She's from our time, so she knows how to use modern firearms and weapons. You can find some modern weapons for her to use for her specials, like a machine gun or a rocket launcher. They cost ammo, unlike every other character's special, but finding ammo is pretty easy, and you probably won't run out unless you spam it a lot. Unlike Kiseki, where the craft points meter to get is carried over in the next fight, TP is reset to near zero every battle. I didn't like this at first, but then I realized that it meant I could go all out in every battle. In Kiseki, I would usually preserve S-crafts for boss fights, but here I use super attacks whenever I could because there's no way to save it anyway. Another mechanic that I like is how you can switch out party members during battle. Even when a character dies, you can switch them out for a character on standby. Characters on standby get experience in battle too, making every character pretty viable. If there's one thing I don't like, it's how every time you get a new party member, they start out at level 1, and you have to power them up to level of your other characters. Books can help with this. They are items that give you free experience, but never felt like I had enough to get them up to quite the right level with the other members. The game is on the easier side overall. There are a few fairly difficult boss fights in the second half. I think the combat can get a bit tiresome in the beginning, especially when you have to go through dungeons, but it gets more fun once you get a full party of characters to use. If you are seeking more of a challenge, there are optional bosses that you can fight that will test your skills. There are also EX dungeons that you can tackle in between major story beats. These are optional dungeons that usually have more difficult enemies. Unlike main dungeons where you can see the enemies on the map, here you get random battles. The random battles can be slightly annoying when you're trying to figure out where to go, but they can be useful for grinding. There are multiple secrets and optional objectives like this that earn you achievements in the game. Achievements don't seem to do anything and are only there for completionists, but it's a neat feature that adds a bit of replayability. As for the erotic content, there isn't actually that much in the main story. I think the narrative actually justifies these scenes fairly well. It's usually used to show how poorly the slaves are treated, with the accompanying narration being more cruel than it is erotic. I think the ero scenes in the main story are well handled overall, and there are a couple cute ones. However, if you don't want to see the ero scenes at all, you can turn them off from the Bethos library. I think if you do this, all important scenes with nudity will be censored, so you can play this way if you really want to. However, I'd advise against it. I feel like those scenes are part of the creative vision and identity of the game. If the age scenes in the main story aren't enough to please you, then there's a plethora of optional scenes. The Kingdom of Do Re Mi Fa Kingdom is entirely dedicated to these optional scenes. There you can see ero scenes with your party members who get a unique erotic outfit. What scene you get is determined by a gacha system. Yeah, this game has a gacha for sex. Characters kind of have the same scene, except with slight differences like their outfit, with the SSR pole making them without any clothes for the scene. Each character has 2 major scenes with those small variations, one without penetration and one with penetration. The second set is unlocked after a character has lost their virginity, which can be done after a character gets to level 18. Additionally, they can also be forcefully unlocked in events that happen in select areas where a character will go missing, and if you don't find them in time, you'll see a sad assault scene. These scenes are all fan service, but I think some of them have surprisingly decent writing. Vegeta has a scene where he notices the women he's with have scars on them, which leads to them talking a bit about how they were former slaves. This reaffirms his resolve to take over the empire and end slavery. It was a sweet moment and more than expected from optional H scenes. Not all are this insightful, but most are fun enough. If Do Re Mi Fa Kingdom isn't enough to satisfy you, there's also the Bad End mode. This is an optional mode you can enter whenever you lose a battle, and shows the party being forced into the slave internment camp. This is an interesting concept. Not often does a game show what happens if the player loses, what exactly is at stake for the characters, while showcasing what being at the slave internment camp is actually like. This mode is absolutely depressing. Every character is in a horrifically pitiful state and is treated inhumanely. The scenes here are graphic and unnerving. The only sliver of hope of escape for the characters is going through a seemingly impossible dungeon, where the characters are subjected to more cruelty and die in one hit. Fortunately, dying in this dungeon will take you back to the main game. Now, this mode might sound like misery porn, but there is a lot of effort put into it. About half of the CGs in the game are for this mode. Akai Mato went all out here on all the possible scenes you can get. It's an extremely unpleasant experience that I was only able to force myself through twice. You do get some items for going through this mode, but it genuinely made me sad seeing the characters like that. The real payoff for doing this comes much later, when an optional side quest can lead to the characters figuring out a way to the internment camp to destroy it and end the mode permanently. I wasn't actually able to accomplish this because the boss you have to defeat is pretty strong, but maybe on a replay. The presentation is stellar. I'm a fan of Akai Mato's art. All the characters have really cute designs. Vegeta has a funny pose, but it matches with his confident personality. There are a lot of CGs, a majority of them are age scenes, but the more normal ones are my favorite. The music is what's really outstanding, with Akai Mato being a fan of Alisoft. They got Shade to compose some original music for the game. Shade is probably most well known for composing some of the most iconic Rance tracks, like Rough Edge and Ontology. His last work for Alisoft before he went freelance was in Rance Quest, which arguably has one of the greatest final boss themes of all time. I'm happy to say that his work on Demon's Routes is just as fantastic as ever. In particular, I love Ground Dasher, a boss fight theme. It goes hard. Shade's hype rock themes that they're known for are strongly present in Demon's Roots, with some phenomenal battle themes. There's even a more melancholic song, Blossom, which was wonderful. Aside from the Shade music, Demon's Roots incorporates freeware music, but you probably wouldn't think that from how amazing it sounds. It doesn't detract from the game or Shade music at all. The inclusion is seamless. This and Black Souls make a good argument for freeware music being rad sometimes. The themes of the story are obviously very anti-authority and oppression. It also tackles the struggles of peaceful coexistence, which reminded me a lot of Monster Girl Quest. While Death Polka wants peace between humans and demons, it's shown not to be as simple as it may sound. Humanity still bears a grudge against demons because of the atrocities committed by the demons during their rule of the continent, even if that stuff happened hundreds of years ago. Stories of that time have been passed on, and humans still view demons with animosity. Likewise, some demons aren't too happy about how they were driven into the Dark Realm and don't have high opinions of humans. At the same time, understand that taking their frustrations out and massacring people would be repeating the same mistakes, leading to their extinction this time. Death Polka is there to bridge the gap between humanity and demons, to try to find a way to peace and mutual understanding. Demons and slaves are essentially in the same position, the defeated that were discarded by the world. Of course, this is why slaves are generally more accepting of demons and why they're able to find common ground. Another theme is the idea of defying fate. It's kind of hard to get into without spoiling anything, but the characters are sleeping slaves to fate, until they awaken and go against what is expected of them. The concept of fighting destiny is somewhat common in JRPGs. I think Demon's Roots has a unique spin on it, and how it ties into King Exit is fascinating. In summary, Demon's Roots is an incredible game. It's ambitious in scope, meticulous in design, and has an extremely compelling narrative. It's the kind of game that reminded me why I love JRPGs. I had such a blast playing it, any minor nitpicks I had were quickly forgotten. I wouldn't hesitate to call Demon's Roots a masterpiece, one that I want more people to play. It's clear that Akai Mato is a genius that deserves more recognition and respect. If anything I've said has piqued your interest, then please buy it. You can purchase the game on Steam, GOG, and the Kagura Games Store. Know that if you get the game off of Steam, you'll need to get a patch off Kagura Games to get the arrow scenes and full experience. This is a game that became a favorite for me, and I hope I can get other people to understand this game's brilliance. I want Akai Mato to continue making games like this. They're currently working on a game called Princess Glue, which sounds like it could be fun. With any luck, we'll get a proper translation of King Exit sometime in the future as well. If you've made it this far, thanks for watching.